Presenting, ladies and gentlemen,
Hard-boiled Haggerty in the ring now.
Today's the heyday of the pretty boy. Kowalski is called killer for helping Gene Stanley of Chicago.
She likes it.
Oh, boy, that can hurt.
Right here at ringside while we go in for a riot of roughhouse that's flatly called wrestling.
It is July 20th, 1973, and in the arena in Houston, Texas, the reigning blonde NWA World Heavyweight Wrestling Champion, Harley Race, is taking on the 31-year-old challenger, Jack Brisco. Brisco is the new darling of the wrestling world. His opponent, Harley Race, will not go quietly into the night. It is a vicious battle, with Brisco hurling Race into the ring ropes. For Brisco, this fight is the opportunity of a lifetime and will make Brisco one of the icons of wrestling. Jack Brisco had been born in Blackwell, Oklahoma on September the 21st, 1941. He was christened Freddie Joe Brisco. He was born into a poor family suffering from hard times, as was at that time most of Oklahoma. For the world in general, this was a momentous year. Europe was in flames as the German military machine smashed its way across Europe and into the USSR, while England, specifically London, was under a full-scale German aerial attack. Rommel and the Afrika Korps were also creating havoc in the Middle East. Back in the USA, President Roosevelt had met with England's Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and war looked ever more ominous for the States. But life goes on. In Oklahoma, it still moved at its own pace. Cab Calloway was playing at the Trianon Ballroom singing his famous Heidi Heidi Ho. And believe it or not, a woman wrote to an Oklahoma City newspaper claiming all the current problems in the world had been brought about because women no longer wore corsets. Corsets and stays keep women and men more rigidly moral, she wrote. The Packard Clipper was the car of the day, and the Yankee Clipper, Joe DiMaggio, hit safely in 56 straight games. In America's #1 entertainment business, Walt Disney's Dumbo opened. As a matter of fact, 1941 was a bumper year for movie classics. They included the likes of the all-time classic Citizen Kane, starring Orson Welles. Crosby and Hope started out on the road to Zanzibar with the beautiful Dorothy Lamour, while Humphrey Bogart brought us The Maltese Falcon. 1941 was also a good year for a former NFL football player. His name, Bronco Nagurski. He held the wrestling title, having just defeated the likes of a young Lou Thez. But by December the 7th, all of America woke up to a day of infamy as Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. Nothing would ever be the same again. It took 4 agonizing years before the free world could celebrate victory against the Nazis and Japan. By now, the young Jack Brisco had reached the tender age of 4, but he still remembers those tough family times.
My family situation was very tough. My mom and dad split when I was very young, and he took off for California. My mom raised me and my brothers and sisters, and we really didn't know him. Well, mostly we spent the time just with each other because my mom had to go to work and to support us, and she was a waitress in a restaurant and trying to support 6 children, which was it was difficult to do. It was almost impossible. Well, I was, we were a very poor family and we were struggling, and just to put food on the table, and a lot of times in the winter times we didn't have electricity in the house, and it was about to freeze to death, and I was always trying to figure out how in the world to get out of this situation. I knew that I was a good athlete, and I knew the only way to get out of this situation was to really work hard at school and work hard as an athlete, and maybe someday be able to go to college and get my family out of this poverty. Well, I started playing football and wrestling, and I became very well of it. I was fortunate enough to have a very good coach My coach's name was Chuck Hetrick. He was a national champion at Oklahoma State University, and he started coaching me wrestling when I was 15 years old, as a sophomore in high school. And he told me if I worked hard that I could really be good at it. So that gave me a lot of incentive, and I worked tremendously hard at it. In my first year as a sophomore, I became Oklahoma heavyweight state champion. In my junior year, I repeated again as Oklahoma State heavyweight champion. My senior year, I pinned every man I wrestled and never even had a point scored against me. And I won a scholarship to Oklahoma State University. Then went to Oklahoma State. I was two-time Big 8 champion, two-time All-American at Oklahoma State. While I was there, the local promoter, Leroy McGurk, who promoted professional wrestling in Oklahoma, came to see me and asked me if I was interested in wrestling pro. And of course, that's what I'd always wanted to do, was to be a pro wrestler. I told him, sure. So Leroy took me under his wing, moved me to Tulsa from Oklahoma State, which was in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and trained me to be a professional wrestler, and it started me there in Oklahoma. I turned professional in 1965. I had my first match on television, which was in Oklahoma City. They did the taping on Saturday nights then. And my first match was against Ronnie Garvin, who later became world's heavyweight champion himself. And we wrestled for about 10 minutes, and then I beat him. But during the match, he threw an elbow over behind him, hit me in the eye, and busted my eye open. So I had my eye busted open the first night we were in the wrestling.
Just 8 years later, in 1973, on July the 20th, in the arena in Houston, Texas, Jack Brisco was to defeat the reigning wrestling champion, the blonde Harley Race, and claim the undisputed NWA World Heavyweight Championship of professional wrestling.
Harley Race was one of the toughest guys I've ever been in the ring with. Harley was not as good a wrestler as Junior, but he was a lot meaner. He was more of a street brawler, more of a knew how to do all the dirty tricks and wasn't afraid to do it. And when you got in the ring with Harley, you were in a dogfight every time you got in the ring with Harley. So he was one of the toughest guys that I'd ever faced. Harley had been one of my adversaries for quite a few years, and him and I and Dory Funk Jr. would go back and forth and back and forth. And we were the three top contenders for the championship. So I had a match scheduled with Harley in Houston, Texas. And it was a 2 out of 3 fall match, and he took the first fall, and I won the second fall. And I had been working out with a guy named Lou Thez, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and Lou had taught me his body press that he used coming off the ropes. So I was in the match and got an opportunity to try this body press, and I did it, and I pinned Harley to win the World's Heavyweight Championship. And the people went crazy. It was a sellout crowd, and I went crazy, and it was just a wonderful feeling. And there, all of a sudden, I found myself standing in the middle of the ring with my hand raised, and the world champion, heavyweight champion, with that solid gold belt around my waist, and it was a great thrill.
Ticket prices were raised about $5. You know, when you come into Los Angeles or San Francisco, Jack Brisco was on the card, and it was the first time for any NWA World Champion they would up the price of the tickets because they know they could get it. People wanted to see this guy who had the Adonis looks and skill, and just, I saw 90-minute, what we call Broadway's draws that Jack had with Dory Jr. and Harley Race and Ed Carpentier from Montreal, and those were dream matches. Anything with Jack Brisco in it, a 5-star match, and that's how others in the business and photographers and people and historians that cover the business view Jack Brisco as a 5-star, world-class, one of the greatest, and of course, Lou Thesz's favorite after Dick Hutton.
So that went on for about a year. It didn't matter, it seemed like who I wrestled there for, just almost a year, just some automatic sellouts everywhere I went. And that's when my name started getting out around the country. And in '71, I started going out to different places like St. Louis and selling out St. Louis with all the top guys in all around the world and across the country. And then my name got into North Carolina, and Jim Crockett Sr. was promoting there, and he started bringing me in for shots there. The same thing, just sell out after sell out, and I ended up going to New York City with Vince McMahon, worked Madison Square Garden, which was the thrill of my life. I'd always heard of Madison Square Garden, always wanted to perform there.
For Jack Brisco, the 70s was his time, to soar to new heights. Jack had returned to the ring with a vengeance, winning in '73 the NWA belt from Harley Race, then fighting his way across the USA, including this fight against Don Muraco. Jack shocked the wrestling world when he became the first American champion to defend his title in Japan. His opponent, Japan's wrestling immortal, Giant Baba.
バックドラップ、岩石を落ちに行った。ジャックブリスコ得意技、カウントは決まった。
Just 17 months after winning the title, Jack did something that was to shock the wrestling world by putting his title on the line in Japan, something no other wrestling champion had ever ventured. His opponent was the enormous Japanese wrestling idol, Giant Baba. The first championship match took place on the 2nd of December 1974 in Kogoshimi, Japan. Baba's size and weight proved to be an almost insurmountable task as Jack proceeded to receive a real pounding. It was all too obvious this could not go on indefinitely, and eventually Jack succumbed. Giant Baba was the new champion, much to the delight of his adoring fans.
Giant Baba was a huge man. He was like 6'6", weighed about 275 pounds, a big Japanese fellow. And he was a really good, tough wrestler. So I signed a 30-day contract with him. I signed to defend my title in Tokyo against him. And I had stipulations if he won, then a week later I'd get him back in Tokyo again for a rematch. So first night I would go into Tokyo, and sure enough, I lost the title to Giant Baba. It was the first time a Japanese guy had ever won the World's Heavyweight Championship.
Jack had obviously learned a lot from that first encounter with this terrifying opponent, and he put that knowledge to good use. Jack's years of hard work and wrestling ability took over, and using his vast array of wrestling maneuvers, he outwitted his opponent and won back his title.
So I had my return match with him a week later there in Tokyo, and I took the title back and grabbed the belt and jumped on the plane and went back home.
Brisco, another great amateur, you know, of course, and great world champion, and just a great gentleman, the best man.
Probably one of the greatest wrestlers that the U.S. has produced. Great champion.
He was to hold that title for one more year, fighting 5 and 6 times a week. His young good looks and sportsmanlike approach brought him many fans, fame, and fortune. But all good things eventually must come to an end. For Jack, that was on December the 10th, 1975, in Miami, Florida, when he lost his title to fellow American Terry Funk.
Losing the heavyweight championship for the last time to Terry Funk in Miami Beach, Florida, I was scheduled to wrestle Dory Funk Jr. in Miami Beach, and something happened where Jr. couldn't make the match, and I was defending my title against Jr., and Terry came in to take Jr.'s place. And I just don't think I was really prepared for that situation. I got in the ring with Terry, and I had a bad night, and I lost the title that night to Terry, and I never was able to get it back, so that was the end of my run as a top wrestler in the world.
Jack continued to fight all comers, both in the tag team events with his brother Jerry and just about every known opponent making the wrestling circuit. Amongst the most popular was Bobo Brazil, a really tough, mean and large wrestler. Together they always put on a great show for the fans. Here are some highlights from one of those fights. It took place in Japan in 1975.
非常に腰の高いボボブラジル、そしてロープに放り投げる体当たり、左の肩から入りました。ショルダーする、ショルダーアタック、はいはい、 正面からコバットが爆発、コバットが爆発しました。ずれ落ちましたチャンピオン、チャンピオン危うし、チャンピオン危うし。完全に動きが止まりました。対角線上に放り投げるコーナー5ブラジル。さてフィギュア4レッグロック、リングの中央だ。ロープまでは手が通ったどうか。さあ入った、足殺し、フィギュア4レッグロック、足4の字に入り対角線上に叩きつけます。初回のボボブラジルでございます。非常に両者が相対しても、まず体格の比較をご紹介しますと、ジャック・ブリスコが188センチ、ボーブラジルが197センチ、大人と子供の違いがありますね。
そうですね、体重でもね、約50ポンド、ボーブラジルの方が多いですね。
はい、またしても出ました。黄金のヘッドパッド、コバットが出ました。早くもコバーに行きました。2本目、場外だ。場外に放り投げました。場外に放り投げました。リングの中は仁王立ち。ボーブラジル、ボーブラジルも場外に行きました。激しい形相で場外に木槌を持ちました。木槌を持ちました。それを喉元へ、チャンピオンの喉元へ刺しました。ルーファースもフォローに行きます。セコンドのルーファースもフォローに行きました。さあカウントを取りに行く。ダブルヘッドパッド、これは叶いません。ゴングを要請しましたね。ゴングを要請しました。3本目、さあどういう結果になりますか。
これは反則を取らなダメですね。完全に2人がかりですからね。
はい、セコンドのルーファース・ジョーンズもかなりエキサイトしております。さあ
Jack's wrestling career was to last another 10 years. During that time, there were frequent battles against the Funk family, both Terry and Dory Jr., but Jack never managed to reclaim his world title. But he did win various state and regional titles, and he and brother Jerry won almost 20 national tag team titles.
Well, Jerry, he'd been amateur wrestling with me, and I taught him after I started amateur wrestling, I taught him how to wrestle amateur too. And of course, he was in the same school system, which had the wrestling programs with coaches. We just wrestled together as amateurs all the way up. So after I turned pro, I taught him how to wrestle pro. So he was in college a couple more years after I left. And when he got out, I'd already taught him how to wrestle pro, and he'd wrestled a few times professionally during the summertime between college years. And then after he got finished with college, I did like the same thing I almost went through. I got him booked in Australia to go to Australia for 3 months. I got him booked in Japan to go to Japan. And he just became very good at it, and ended up at the one time when I was world's heavyweight champion, my brother Jerry was the world's junior heavyweight champion. We were the only two brothers in the history that's ever accomplished that. Describe my style as basically collegiate due to my background, and then I mixed in the professional moves with it to blend in, and I would describe my style as very scientific and very aggressive and very quick. That's what I attained my success to, is my aggressiveness and my quickness, and always trying to think of holes, a few holes, 4 or 5 holes down the line. Fortunately, I always kept myself in very good conditioning. I never had a serious injury. I had a lot of bumps and bruises, a lot of sprains, but I never had an injury that caused me to miss a match. And I was very fortunate in that sense. And probably the toughest matches I've ever had was against Dory Funk Jr. As Dory Funk Jr., you could not get him tired. He was just a machine. He would just go and go and go. You couldn't get him tired. He was one of the toughest, and I think the second toughest match was against Harley Race.
By the mid-'80s, for Jack, it was all over. Now he could look back at his many victories with pride, but for Jack, his greatest battle and his greatest victory was yet to come.
I wake up on a Saturday morning, and I'm paralyzed from the chest down. I can't move. About 5 years ago, I was having a lot of back problems. My back was hurting quite a bit, and I'd been doing a lot of yard work in my yard at home, and I thought I'd pulled a muscle in my back, but the problems kept continuing. I wake up on a Saturday morning, and I'm paralyzed from the chest down. I can't move. So I get my wife up, and she tries to get me up, and she goes to calls the doctor, and the doctor says, well, you need to get into the emergency room right away. And They ran tests on me probably 8-10 hours, every kind of test you could known to man. And they found a growth that was wrapped around my spinal cord, and it was growing, and it choked off my nerves. And the doctor said it was about to kill me. It was already taken everything away from me from chest down. He said the next thing it was going to do was shut your lungs down. He said, we're going to have to get it out of there. So they tried to get it out of there. They didn't know what it was, so when they went to cut it out of there, it was a big kind of tumor-like thing. When they cut it, it was full of poison. And the poison spread all through my body and poisoned me. And so I went into shock or whatever, coma. They put me on life support systems. I was on life support for 6 days. When I finally come off of that, they put me in intensive care. I ended up in intensive care for 26 days. And ended up staying in the hospital altogether 3 months. And my wife took care of me every day. After 3 months in the hospital, I went home. They had a hospital bed for me at home. Having gone through that has really changed my attitude towards life. I appreciate being here every day. I'd like to thank my wife. Without her, I would have never made it. She took care of me and nursed me through all that bad time.
Today, as a couple, Jack and Jan Brisco are one of the great love stories of wrestling, and of course, as he credits her both publicly and in the book with saving his life, and she really did. Thank God for our business, wrestling, that Jan was around to save Jack. So I really, it's a real sweet lady, classy lady, doesn't like to talk much, but she is something else, and we really thank her for doing that for us.
Yeah, the doctor said there's no reason why I shouldn't be here. Whew, man. I felt like I lived it all over again.
Today, Jack Brisco lives out his retirement with his loving wife Jan in Florida, where he owns a successful auto body repair shop. But you can be sure his mind still goes back to the glory years of his wrestling career, one crowned with glorious achievements, honored by all of his wrestling peers. In 1973, he was voted PWI Wrestler of the Year. He is a winner of the prestigious Lou Thesz Award, as voted by his peers at the Cauliflower Alley Club, and he has been inducted into the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Some say a man is known best by his deeds. In the wrestling ring, Jack's was self-explicit. In his private life, Jack cherishes his privacy and those of his loved ones. But one thing we do know for sure, and that is the good-looking boy from Oklahoma gained his fame and respect the old-fashioned way. He earned it.